Welcome to our November monthly member call. I'm Sarah Sterling. I'm the program catalyst. I've been gone for a little while. I was on maternity leave, so I'm so happy to be back. So happy to see so many new faces. Conveners.org, as our members know, is a community of purpose first organizations that bring people together for social and or environmental change. This can be event organizers, universities, philanthropic organizations, impact accelerators, you name it. If you are interested in bringing people together for social and environmental impact, this is the community for you. And we're a very dynamic and active community with organizations from all over the world. So I just want to note that this is day, afternoon, and evening for many people on the call. And I just want to thank you for taking the time and investing the time in joining us. This member call, we're joined by Christina Giliutin. Did I get it? Almost. From Red F, who will be our guest Spark. We try and have a new guest Spark on every single call to really showcase different voices and perspectives and to just spark the conversation. So I really want everyone on this call to feel like they can jump in with ideas or questions through the chat or for unmuting yourself as well throughout Christina's presentation. It's meant to spark conversation so that we can share all of our ideas and perspectives within the community. We also have Ray Champion, who is just our overall champion for everything, but operations director, operations manager for Conveners.org. And I just want to get us started. So we have an activity that actually Christina introduced us to. We've actually test piloted it on another call that we had, and it went really well. So I want to also share this with you. And it goes to the theme of this call, which is really sharing different practices and activities to engage participants in a virtual setting. Now that a lot of our engagements with our cohorts or participants or entrepreneurs are virtual, we want to share concrete activities that you can do with them to make your virtual spaces come more alive. And so the activity that we're going to do is in Zoom breakout rooms. So we'll be putting you into rooms. If you've never had the breakout room experience through Zoom before, you don't have to do anything. You should be automatically whisked away into your rooms. We'll have about 10 minutes for you to interact in your small groups, and then we'll bring you back here. So don't exit out of Zoom. We don't want to lose you. And the prompt for today is I want all of you to look around your workspace and pick an object. It can be any object you want. We've had water bottles, pens, in photographs, anything from your workspace. And then I want you to share in your groups, why did you pick that object? What does that object say about you? Or what does that object spark for you in terms of just conversation with your group? And let's see what's sparked from those conversations. So Ray, are you able to do the breakout rooms as co-host, or do I have to do them? I can't remember.
Only the host can do them, but if you make me host, I can do it.
I can do. I have them open. All right, so I'm going to whisk you away into your breakout rooms. I'll also put the prompt for you all, but again, pick any item you want, any random item. Why'd you pick that item? What does it say or speak to you? And share that with the group. And Christina, I don't know if you want to add anything to that activity since it is your activity. So I want to make sure that we're maintaining the essence of it.
I think you got the essence.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, I will see you guys back here in about 10 minutes and then we'll start our group conversations. Have fun. Welcome back, everyone. I want to take a few moments just to debrief that exercise and kind of hear from you all how it went, what came up for you all, how'd the activity go? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Good feedback for Christina. And you can just unmute yourself, I think. I don't think we'll have too many conflicting people talking at the same time. Or you can use the raise hand function.
I really liked having glimpses into other people's lives. I think that not often on these calls do we get to see a little more personality or like how each other are living and what we love. So that's always really fun and interesting to me.
Thanks, Missy. Yeah, definitely. Definitely more personal things about people, more personal interactions. Karen, you are unmuted. Did you want to share?
It was just easy to go deep and personal very quickly. But we had 4 extra minutes after we each shared. So I think it could have been shorter.
Okay. Good.
Or
feedback.
added a second question.
Yeah, definitely. Who else wants to share? Greg?
I will say, just to add on to that, it was wonderful to have a little bit of extra time. I find that my experience with these breakouts is, getting cut short when you're just in the middle of having some good shares is a bit frustrating. So it's always nice to have a little extra buffer time. That's never a bad thing in my humble opinion.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg.
I agree with Greg. In fact, we found the extra time was useful in making some connections. We found we have people in common. So it was great to actually have that time.
Great. Thank you, Manoj. Well, I'm going to hand the baton over to Christina, who's going to be leading us through some of their sort of best practices and findings from their own work over the past year, concrete activities and things that can be useful to you all, but also please feel free to jump in through chat, ask questions. This is going to be I'm admitting someone else into the room. This is going to be a dynamic conversation, we hope. So we really would love for you guys to be chatty and sharing from your own experiences and perspectives as well. So Christina, let me know if you need anything from my end, but take it away.
I think I'm good. And I think we have actually plenty of time. So I would actually encourage people, obviously you can put a question in the chat, but just jump in and cut me off. I think that'll be way more interesting for everybody. What I put together here is definitely not exhaustive. Even on our share, I just heard things that I was like, I need to write that down for the future. So I think all of you have probably tried or seen things that are really valuable. And I'm almost thinking after this, there might be a good place to capture actually a lot of ideas that people are kind of looking for, and you can kind of cross-pollinate a little bit. So please do chime in. I will very briefly introduce myself before I switch to the slides. I'm Christina. I work at REDF. We broadly support social enterprises that employ people with barriers to employment, which historically has really been people with a history of incarceration, homelessness, substance abuse, opportunity youth. We are now actually expanding that a little bit to include survivors of domestic violence and trafficking and refugees. So that's kind of new for us. And so we are kind of broadening a bit on that in that sense. We are national. We are US domestic focused only for now. I've had a couple different roles at REDF. I've been there, I've crossed the 9-year mark, which feels like a lot. So I've definitely touched a bunch of different programs. I'm definitely going to narrow what we're talking about today. This is really going to be about on the topic of kind of knowing your audience, how to build relationships virtually. So I'm not going to get into our program offerings and all that. I'm happy to do that if interesting afterwards, but that's not the focus here. With that, I'm going to share my slides. Give me 1 second. And then, sorry, I haven't done this in a while. I need to share to the, I'm sorry, where's the sharing? So it's actually in presentation mode.
So it should be that very top right where it says from beginning, the play button there.
Right, I'm sorry. I can just go from my actual.
I believe so. Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, we can still see.
Okay, is everyone looking at Know Your Audience, Adapting Virtual Engagement? A couple big. Yes. Great, awesome. Okay, I kind of covered the REDF part. I'm going to keep us moving to get to like the meat of what we're talking about. As I mentioned this, but this is specifically our mission is investing in advising high impact social enterprises to employ and empower people overcoming barriers to work. I should mention, we are based in San Francisco. We have an office in LA. We've often had a few remote workers, and now we have a lot more remote workers over the last 6 months. A lot of people have actually moved temporarily or permanently to other places. So now we're going to be more spread around the country. Okay, so some background first. As I said, you know, the thing I'm going to hone in on here is throughout all the programs we run, and we do different types of cohorts, we focus on relationship building from the social enterprise leaders and other kind of participants of our programs to us, REDF, and between each other. It's really both is equally important. Typically, we have a lot of opportunity to bring fun and levity to kind of curate experiences, which builds and solidifies these relationships. We know that making it fun makes a huge difference. That's easier to do in person, as I'm sure you all know. So in the spring of 2020, where we realized we had to alter a bit about what we were doing, we really tried to frame it as, how can we replicate some of these in-person experiences and moments virtually? Getting to the core of what this entire session was called is knowing your audience. It's really about who comprises, I'm going to use the word cohort a lot because for us a lot of times it is about a group. Who comprises cohort? Why are they there in that program? Do they already have these types of relationships, or are you providing them with something unique that they wouldn't necessarily get otherwise from other places? What are their goals, needs, and focus? What kind of time do they have to devote to relationship building, and what it is that you're offering? And is that a core interest to them, or is it not? And that needs to be adjusted based on what you know about this group. Moving right along, so I'm going to take us back to spring of 2020. We had just made a bunch of offers to our Farber Fellows. Those in my small group heard that our Farber Fellows are really business school students that we place across the country in our venture philanthropy portfolio. It is an immersive experience. They are placed in these social enterprises around the country. We bring them together typically 3 times throughout the summer: orientation, midpoint, and closing. So there's some programming in between, but the bulk of the programming is happening in person at those periods. We had just made a bunch of offers and had just had those offers accepted when chaos ensued, as we know. We didn't really know what to say initially because it was so unclear. Are we not going to the office for a few weeks? Is it a month? Is it 2 months? Are they still travel? Can they still travel? We really didn't know anything at first. I'm sure you all went through some period of this time, thinking back to that, like March especially. So what we really tried to focus on, and I wouldn't say that we were so diligent that we laid out a slide like this in the beginning, but in looking back and trying to capture this for today, I was thinking about like, what were the themes of how we had to think about what to do. And so I think these were kind of the 4 components. It was about building trust. We need to get out there and communicate to them immediately, which was great because we actually were getting feedback from the schools that a lot of employers were not kind of proactively reaching out to their kind of future interns. Obviously, some offers were rescinded. We were not doing that. We knew that. But we really tried to be proactive in saying, look, like, we don't know what's going on either. You know, feel free to reach out to us. We will keep you as informed as we can. We don't know what's happening. We're not rescinding your offer. And we really tried to be really proactive in that. I should mention what I'm talking about right now is very specific to that time period, but it kind of leads to what happened after that. Over communicate, again, this is for the purpose of this exact thing I'm talking through. These are business school students. We kind of have a general sense of their lifestyle. We said at the end of the summer, we actually want them to say we communicated too much. We want to annoy them with our communication. That will be a success because we knew this was such a fundamental change in the programming. They're not going to be on site. Their project manager is going to be remote. They're going to be remote. I should say I fast forwarded a little bit between when we didn't know anything and when we knew it was going to be fully remote. So we said, what are the things we need to kind of put in a more infrastructure that we normally don't need because of this situation? And so we said, okay, there needs to be more, individual weekly check-ins from us. What's the role of this kind of the relationship manager on our end versus their project manager? There was weekly group communication, group Zoom calls, one-on-one check-ins. It was just kind of like being really conscientious to say, let's assume we would rather err on over communicating rather than under. And that really helped drive a lot of what we did. Again, when I say we wanted to annoy them, I would never say that for the social enterprise leaders. So this is specifically about knowing your audience and their situation. New opportunities, we were very limited. I think a lot of the things that are real anchors to this program that we've been doing for over 20 years, we know what works. We've iterated on it a lot. And rather than kind of focusing on all the things that we couldn't do, we really tried to reframe it and say, but this is actually giving us a lot of opportunities to potentially do things that we can't normally do because everything needs to be in person. So that was a real, like a helpful reframing. And then being creative to not get stuck in the way we've done things in the past, and making sure that you're really creating the space and the time to think about it that way, to say, forget what we've done. Let's like pie in the sky, you know, Google some things, draw some things, and see like if we're creative, like what kind of bubbles up from that. I'm going to keep going. Please, somebody just chime in if you have any comments. I'm going to move a little bit faster. So this is about, I tried to come up with a theme here, and my theme is make it IRL, which, you know, I only probably recently learned IRL is in real life on the internet, hashtag. So the theme really became, how do we create experiences and moments that are tangible in real life? This came up in actually our small group, also just, you know, unsolicited, kind of some things we talked about were like connecting it back to like your office and your coworkers by things kind of on your desk. So a couple of things I wanted to mention. Normally when we get our farbers kind of recruited, we'll send out a welcome pack, and we're, you know, we're excited to have you in a few months and blah, blah, blah. We held off on that and actually made it part of orientation. We said, here's your welcome pack. And then we actually labeled products inside per day, so that when we did orientation virtually, which was, I believe, 3 or 4 days, but we also shortened the day. It wasn't a full day. We did like a few hours a day. And each day they actually unwrapped kind of a gift. And there was a little bit of a theme. It was either a social enterprise gift from our portfolio that kind of mapped to something we were doing that day. The day we were doing coffee chats, it was actually coffee from a Seattle coffee company, which is where we were all supposed to be for orientation. So we tried to really like theme each gift, but it was like every day everyone's opening up the same object. Warm-ups, the second bullet you're all familiar with, we just did it, so I'm going to skip that. Changing the name on the Zoom, you know, it's a silly small thing, but I find that different people like context. So if you have your name, we would kind of say, okay, today change your name to your first name and the organization you're working with this summer or your project. Geography is a big one. It really helps to say, oh, so-and-so, oh, you're in Tennessee now. Oh, you're with your parents. Like, just kind of sets the stage of like, where are we all calling in from? What time zone are we on? Then we started crowdsourcing, which was kind of fun. Like in the beginning, we'd say like, what do you guys want to know about today? You know, what do you want to hear about? And they would just kind of throw out suggestions like improv style, and then we would do that. But I'm surprised how nice it is when you're looking at kind of a screen of faces and names, that there's also like a little bit of a hook that you actually like know something about that person. Entering the room, this was a total experiment. We said, okay, normally if we were meeting in person, we all come into the room, you put your stuff down, and you probably start talking to the person next to you who's putting their stuff down. So we said, let's try to replicate that. So we had them call in and we said, great, today's warm up is we're just gonna put you in breakout rooms and you just do whatever you want for a few minutes and we'll bring you back. And it's a nice way to kind of warm up to like a more social setting. Many of us are, you know, losing our social skills. I'll speak for myself on that. But it's kind of a way to break that down a little bit and make it a little bit casual, chatting, you know, that sort of thing. We've used this. This actually got oddly really positive feedback, and we've used that a number of times now. Wheel of questions is one of my favorites. It's a game-like way to introduce people. So I threw in an example. There's a lot of wheels on the internet. This is basically, you can put in your questions. I have a list of my favorite questions, and you put them in there and we spin the wheel, and whatever, you know, whose ever turn it is, they answer that question. So it kind of gets away from monotonous when everyone's answering the same thing or kind of introducing themselves more in a more typical way. I've used that a lot internally as well. If anyone wants my list of favorite questions, I'm happy to send that along as well. Okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get us to like a conversation. Some other activities we incorporated. The scavenger hunt, specifically for MBA students, was awesome. We assigned them to these smaller groups. It was like multiple weeks of a project, and it culminated in a presentation to our kind of a panel of judges. And then they kind of won a prize or something. But it was a really nice way that we took them out of, in like groups of 3, they basically had to talk about something that wasn't work. And we made it fun, and they had to create this presentation, and some of them like, you know, went like above and beyond. But that worked really well. Again, I would never do that with social enterprise leaders. This was specifically the MBA students. Coffee chats with leaders. I think maybe I mentioned that already. That's a little bit more typical. I think a lot of people do things like that. We experimented with kind of providing prompts, more prompts, less prompts. We really did want whoever is doing the chat to have a lot of leeway to drive that conversation. We did this with internal senior leadership, but also this is one of those things we were able to leverage in a way we would not have been able to do normally, because we were able to bring in some social enterprise leaders that are kind of the same age as like kind of the general MBA students are. And they're these really go-getter social entrepreneurs that have like built these businesses specifically focused on employment. And many of them said their most like memorable moments of the summer were those really like intimate chats with those entrepreneurs. I think they were really blown away with like, wow, this person doesn't have necessarily like more experience than me, and look what they've been able to build. It was great, and that's something we normally wouldn't be able to do, because we can't pull people out of their work for, you know, to fly them here and there just to do a little chat. We also were able to bring in a few alumni into this in a different way than we typically have been able to do. We have some alumni that like being involved, so this is a way we could bring them in a lot more easily. We set up a Slack that was more focused on work, and then they created their own WhatsApp. I think generally the division we find with not just the Farbers, but our accelerator program, they often create like a WhatsApp that's like social, and then the Slack is where the work happens. And it's great. They don't add us to the WhatsApp, so we don't know what's happening there. I think that's great. And then encouraging self-organizing. They often, you know, we really, not just socially, but also we've found that the last few years especially, these business school students often come with some significant expertise in something, and the others want to learn. So they often will organize their own kind of like content delivery or kind of webinars. And we really encourage that. It goes really well. I'm almost done here. The power of swag. I am the person at Red F that really pushes this idea. I think it's really important to give people kind of a connection back to your organization and the experience they had with you through, I'm going to underline this, high quality stuff. So I would much rather give people one thing, but I know it's like usable, it's functional, it's a good enough thing that if they don't need it, they'll give it to somebody else to use. It's not going to end up in a landfill or in the back of a closet. So, you know, really like nice water bottles. We do sweatshirts. Backpacks have become like really popular, that we get people, if they lose something, they ask us if they can buy a replacement because they use it so much. Water bottles, we have those Farber alumni sweatshirts you see there. That's specifically for the business school students when they finish. Other gifts, we make sure they're mission aligned. So either they're like high quality branded, or they're actually aligned with the social enterprise mission. I have to say, before I jump to my other examples, I will say that Greg Payne, who's on this call, who is a Farber alum himself, literally, I don't know why, he told me that the last time he was on this call, he had his Red F water bottle out, which I thought was so perfect, because Greg was a Farber with us, Greg, I hope you don't mind, in 2012. So he's still using that water bottle, and he randomly told me that in the chat. So that
That's right.
So
Power swag.
The power of swag, like this is like a completely fortuitous example, but we get like people really say they're like proud to use a backpack, and wherever they live, somebody will ask them like, "What's Red F?" And they love feeling like they're an ambassador for our organization. So that's enough of the branded stuff. I think another two kind of examples that were awesome. We did we had a social enterprise cohort call, not business school students, right before Halloween. And so we said, oh, everyone put your favorite Halloween candy into the Zoom. And someone on my team, I cannot take credit for this, she already plotted that we were gonna do a game, and the prize was gonna be like a bucket of that candy. Whoever wins is gonna get that candy. And so she literally, when somebody won, she had already ordered it on Amazon. It was like the next day, this guy got a bucket of Twizzlers that sit on his desk now. He has brought it up on 2 different calls in the last, when was Halloween? 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago? Not even 3 weeks ago. But he mentions it repeatedly because I think it was such a like customized, personalized thing that really happened in the moment. And it made me so happy to see somebody else did that. I was like, I think we're doing a good job of trying to be opportunistic and creative and like notice those opportunities when they come up, because people really notice it on the other end. I'm giving you guys, this is a secret, a future example is a Zoom mug. So I took this off the internet. You'll see there's like a BFF there, but I had this idea that I want to kind of figure out if it's a bottle or a mug, but I actually want to get like a Zoom call for a cohort, like a wrap around on like a mug. And then people would be like, that was my 2020 Reddit experience. It was like all Zooming. So I'm very excited about that. I haven't actually done it yet, but it's on the radar. I'm almost done, and then I promise I'm gonna like move faster. I call this general good practices. I don't call anything best practices because I think that's a little presumptuous. So these are our general good practices. 1, review is really important. We always try to bridge from the last time we were all together to the present. Checking in and out. The idea of checking into the room and checking out of the room, at a minimum, we will do 1-word checkout and in. Either verbally or actually just in the chat. People actually tend to like that and they're used to it now. Sharing, I called it a plant, but really it's more about if somebody's already kind of taken something we all worked on together and they've applied it and they learned something and they made a mistake or it's going really well, we actually will say like, hey, can you share that in the beginning of this call? Like that will really help people. That works really well. I think probably a lot of you are probably familiar with that idea. Variation, this concept of like really changing it up and giving people quiet time to think on their own on a call is okay. And not everyone is used to that. And I will say Reddit is very guilty of this, where we'll do presentations and then it's like any questions. And I think for a lot of people, they don't think that way, including myself. Like I need time for everyone to be quiet so I can like think about what I'm looking at. And so we've really incorporated this to say whenever we're showing something, we actually then say, okay, now we're all going to work on our own for 5 or 10 minutes, whatever, depending on the situation. Jot down your notes, questions you have, what are you thinking? Maybe there's a small group share out after that. Maybe not, it kind of depends on the topic, but I think this concept of giving people quiet time on Zoom is okay. I've seen people say, take your cameras off, you don't need to sit. Your face doesn't have to be on camera. Go off the camera, take 5 minutes, think about this, write down, something. Cutting PowerPoint. I heard this many years ago from a presenter that said, the PowerPoint is supporting me as a presenter, not the other. I don't support the PowerPoint. And I thought it was very interesting. And I think not everyone would even agree with that. But I think virtually, if you care about kind of the relationships in the cohort, cutting the PowerPoint when you're having a conversation, so that central on the screen is not the PowerPoint, it's actually just people's faces. It's not perfect and some people will be off camera and all that, but it's still like a step away from like the PowerPoint is not why we're here. We're actually all here to share with each other. Testing, this is pretty obvious, experimenting with scheduling workshops and gathering in new ways. We've done a lot of this. I'm sure a lot of you have done this because now that you're not flying, people aren't flying in, you can flex a little bit and see what works. Visuals, I just kind of threw in a few things here. Trying to get away from just word heavy presentations. I might have violated this here, but keep it in mind. Trying to use more images and visuals. RedF, I know, is guilty of this. We do not do this well. We are very word heavy in our organization, so it's a cultural shift, I would say. But as I've tried to introduce it, even internally, people really taken to it. Tools, there's many online tools for collaboration. Keep it simple, usable. One tip I will say is depending on the size of your group, if somebody is actually behind, they don't know how to annotate or do some sort of Google slide, I actually encourage people to like stop and just help that person. We got some interesting feedback where somebody said they really appreciated that we actually stopped everything to help one person, and the feedback wasn't from that person. They said that it felt much more like a group experience, because we're like, okay, let's just make sure everyone's following. Like this is like no person left behind kind of as we keep going. And I think that was like the right feeling and the vibe we were trying to put out. It happened by accident, but it was a good lesson. Drawing, I sort of mentioned this, but this idea of not everything has to be words, and sometimes actually drawing a visual can be really helpful for people. And then they even share in a small group. We've done this where we're kind of prototyping or designing something we're trying to do, and we're working with our entrepreneurs to talk through like a problem they're trying to solve, and how would they visualize the solution differently and not in words. There's definitely people that are much more versed in kind of those areas, but luckily we have some consultants that are really great at that and very skilled. So I've seen the impact it has had on people. I'm trying to learn myself from them. And this is it. These are my key takeaways. I hope I did not talk too long. This is really, number one, who you're designing for, AKA know your audience, the name of our session today, and read the room, being able to adjust and adapt and be creative. Number two is somewhat related, being flexible and creative in your thinking and your approach, and creating the space for your team to think that way. It doesn't happen magically. You kind of need to step out of the day-to-day and the structure and the operations to be able to think in those terms. And then making it real is this theme that we've really come out with in 2020, is like, how do we create those opportunities to connect the virtual experiences to something really tangible? That's everything I want to say. The last thing I will say very briefly, it's like a plug. RedF has a practitioner platform called redfworkshop.org, and it's open to anyone who wants to join. And we do put out tools out there. There's a lot of webinars we put out. You can actually find we have a social enterprise directory in there nationally. So it's always just helpful to throw it out there if anyone says, oh, I want to keep track of, what you guys are doing. Our accelerator is about to open, so that everyone who's kind of in workshop will get the notification about our accelerator opening and other programming as it comes up. With that, I'm going to officially stop talking and see if there's any questions. If people have additions, like even on our mini share, I heard some awesome things. So I don't know if people have other things that they want to share to make sure that other people are hearing it.
Thanks so much, Christina. And feel free to unmute as well, guys, if you want, or use the chat. But we can also use silence to give you some moments of silence to think through what Christina's presenting.
Being okay with silence. Although Greg seems like he's about to chime in. Am I right? Oh, I was wrong. Oh.
You know me so well. Not much has changed since 2012, right, Christina? I mean that in a good way. And actually, you know what? First of all, I want to thank you for the shout out.
Of course.
Second of all, thank you for this presentation. And I promise this was not a planted comment to everybody who's here. But after seeing this and after having the experience I had with the internship several years ago, 8 years ago now, and just knowing what obviously must have had to be re-innovated, rethought, and I'd be curious too if you have some commentary, Christine, on what the experience was, what the feedback was. But before we get to that, my comment was, and forgive me, I just took a jog. That's why I'm a little out of breath here. What I think what was missing, if you don't mind, was knowing you, Christina. I think there's an element to the person who's leading this really making a big difference. In other words, like knowing you, I know that you're high energy, incredibly committed to the mission, very passionate. I have no doubt that, for all these mechanics that obviously are important, the necessity of having someone who's leading this, who is just exudes energy. And again, I promise it's not a plant, promise it's not a, I'm not intending to compliment you, although that's the effect. But I wonder if, and I'd be happy to hear what the feedback is, but I wonder if, that's a critical element to making something like this succeed.
That's a really great addition. First of all, thanks for the compliment. I'll take them where I can get them. I would say, to give you something specific that I think I've definitely infused in the conversation I've had internally that is not in this deck that maybe should have been, is this concept of trying to make things more casual and less formal. There has been times where I do kind of personally, I will go out of my way to make like awkward jokes that I know like are not that funny, but like it's actually, you can very quickly feel the dynamic change, especially people, you have to gauge, like, do people know each other, do not know each other? I purposely, you know, in the beginning, it's not like chit chat because generally I know these people, but it's like almost teeing up conversation about things that are going on. Like, I know people say they hate small talk, but I'm like, small talk, I actually don't think of it as small talk. I actually think it's like, that's how you can like very quickly like connect with people. And small talk can actually be very interesting. It can help people make some connections. You can like use that time better. But to Greg, to your point, we literally just hired our new accelerator manager. And I think that person, both, obviously now it's virtual, but it will go back to being in person. I pushed really hard that my #1 candidate in that pool was the person that I think does what you just articulated. I was saying, we have the structure of the accelerator. All those people would be great. They could run the operation, they could run the program, but we need the person that's going to be a natural relationship builder. And I actually, that is very dominant to me in one person. And we hired her. So I do think both virtually and in person, it's critical when this concept of like cohort matters, and you have to be somebody who kind of enjoys that aspect, and not everybody does. I don't know if I even like responding to what you're actually saying, but
yeah, it was more of a comment for your feedback and really for anybody else's kind of reaction. But that was super helpful. I assume that since I was with Red F that things had evolved and you had a team instead of doing absolutely everything by yourself. But it's great to hear.
Right back in the old days, yeah.
That's right. It's great to hear about the lesson learned about the accelerator manager.
And I'm just seeing a lot of the chats that I could not see when I had my other screen up. So I'm really sorry, did I miss? Oh, I'm sorry. Ray said, can you close the presentation so we can see? That's why it's good to have more than one person involved in these things. That's another lesson. You should always have more than one person paying attention. Yeah, so there's a few, packed with purpose. So I'm kind of going backwards here. The swag.
Adrian's raising his hand, Christina, and he's been commenting a bunch in the chat too. Go for it, Adrian.
I'm not tracking this chat at all. Adrian, do you want to just chime in here?
Yeah, no, but thank you so much, Christina. That was really great. And I completely agree on your last point. I think in a virtual world, the facilitation, and then the relationship building, it's almost like you gotta have you gotta be able to hold the room, a virtual room, similar to but even more so, right, in a virtual way. But the thing I was gonna offer, and something we've been thinking about at Equine Green, which is, and typically when this is in person, you'd have like one person who's sort of like holding the room and like driving the content. And we found that in a virtual world, we may need to tag team more often, just because I think what kind of just happened, like holding and facilitating the content.
I did it on purpose. It was to exhibit. It was to illustrate how important it is.
Exactly. No, no, we've been similarly trying to think like, you know what, it is too much for one person to like hold the room, facilitate the thing, monitor all the nonverbals in the chat. Like, it's just too much. And so we're like, oh shoot, we need to like have 2 people at least doing this, because it's just too much in a virtual world, where normally in person, like, you could do it standing in front of a room and you can keep an eye on all the things. It just requires a little differently. So
and to be fair, I will say there's a lot of basic virtual presentation stuff that is completely missing in this deck, because I knew we weren't really going to spend that much time, and I was trying to like hone in on this, like, how do you make things tangible? But like, there's so many kind of best practices or good practices around how to run engagement. So I fully agree. And I wasn't even trying to articulate that, but I agree with all of it. And I figured there's a lot of people that are actually better than that, clearly, than I am. So I wasn't focusing on that in this. But yeah, I fully agree. And I think there's a lot of other of those kind of basics, foundational things that are missing right now. Thank you.
Craig has raised his hand as well, so I want to
Craig.
give him a chance to chime in.
Thanks for a wonderful presentation. So I just wanted to make 2 comments and then just provide some resources. So one suggestion is, we do weekly webinars and other stuff, and we keep it at the same time every week and use the same link. And we have tried to adjust it, and then we lose people. So just be consistent. I love Jamboard. It just makes people happy, and you can draw, so a lot of times we'll put a Jamboard link, we set it up beforehand and put it in the Zoom chat, and everybody goes and watches it and give them some quiet time. So it really breaks up the flow. And then 2 things, like we all have Zoom fatigue. So we've been using Wonder, which is a German startup that's free so far for meetups for up to 100,000 people. And every time we've used it, people leave happy. And so one of my biggest critiques is I just find, even with what we do, so many tools don't provide the right experience. And I find a lot of organizations use tools they don't fully understand, including us, like they just don't match our audience or the needs, or people are just burnt out on it. But I love Wonder. It's my favorite kind of meetup tool, because I've tried spatial chat and everything else, and I just leave unhappy and frustrated. But like experimenting with tools, to me, and most of them we don't like, or they're too expensive.
Yeah.
Can you explain what Wonder and Jamboard are a little bit more?
Sure. So Jamboard is owned by Google, and it's basically a tool you can create, like, visuals, like cue cards, or put in things. So basically you have to make it shareable, and then you can put a link in, and it's like a visual board, and everyone can go and you can put a question like, what are you working on today? And people can write comments, they can draw, they can upload pictures, and then they can move everything around. So just a great way of visually engaging with the group. And then Wonder is like, imagine you had a happy hour, but you actually can do presentations. And so you can set up thematic tables. And the nice thing is people can move around, and you can have groups of up to 15 people, and they can move from table to table or just have chats one-on-one. And it's the most seamless thing I found so far that replicates real life experiences. But like other people have said, we've used it with people in the global South, and it takes a lot of bandwidth. So that's one of the challenges we've run into, is almost every tool that we use takes too much bandwidth for people with low internet access.
Yeah, definitely something to consider for sure.
There's a couple comments about the swag, and I'm just kind of trying to filter through. There's a few things around swag and gifts and all that. I know Packed with Purpose, that one has come up. We're kind of looking into how we can get them to basically create gifts that are comprised of our social enterprise. I think they do let you curate and pick what items you want on there. Gifts for Good is another website that has a number of our social enterprises in there, and they have it's broader. It's just kind of has all the companies represented have like a mission driven business. But that's another one that's been really good. And we're starting to use that as gift cards for thank yous, instead of rather than us picking their gift, we say, thank you so much. Pick yourself like a gift that you otherwise wouldn't get. And we're trying to completely stop the Amazon stuff, because we used to give out like some Amazon gift cards, and I'm so over that we're not doing that anymore. So anyway, just want to mention that. I don't know if anyone else has a swag comment. I'm really into swag, and if anyone has good ideas and they want to chime in.
I do have a reference for swag. I'm looking them up because they're a startup. They're totally aligned with social and environmental causes. They're seeking their B certification now. And they're absolutely addressing exactly, Christina, what you talked about, which is like, let's make like good one-time gifts once a year instead of 80 gifts that are going to be thrown out and cause waste in the entire supply chain, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
Anyways, forgive me 1 second. I'm going to look them up. I just
didn't
want to lose that.
Put it in the chat, Greg, and we'll also be sending a recap email out and a blog post that has all these resources as well, so you have it all in one place. So everyone that's RSVP'd for this call and joined us on the call will be receiving that recap email and blog post. So don't worry. I do want to be conscientious of time. And so in the spirit of what some of the things that Christina has mentioned, I'd love just to invite everyone in the chat to write really quickly just one word of how they're checking out of the call today. And while you're doing that, I just want to also make a plug for conveners.org that we are building out our member call agenda and guest spark invitations for next year for 2021. And I want to invite each and every one of you, if you are really passionate about a particular topic, like Christina is about virtual, making things real life for virtual communities, please let me know. It's open to members as well as our partners. And we would love to have you be a guest spark on one of our member calls. They're every month, third Thursday of every month, usually at 1 p.m. Pacific, but we can also be flexible depending on your needs as well. So please get in touch with me. So if everyone wants to just write one word of how you're checking out of the call today before we leave, and I'm happy to read them off. Liz, sparked. Minaj, inspired. Greg, connected. Ray, grateful. Dennis, collaborative. Jamboard and Kelly. Teresa, interested. Christina, excited. Madison, energized. Hillary, inspired. Adrian, feeling electric. Diane, inspired. I'm feeling excited. Now I have all these tools we can use and resources to share.
I know,
Wanna just
sorry,
give-
so I mentioned, I know in our call, I think Karen was talking about a gala, how to make galas virtual. I think that could actually be like an entirely other interesting conversation, actually.
Yeah, definitely. That would be really interesting.
Be helpful to me.
Kind of hone in
Yeah.
on
I'm
it.
sure we've all attended quite a few of them already.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to do it well and make it fun and interactive and
Yeah.
feel like you are there together, sharing a space at least, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's a virtual space. So
Yeah. Yeah.
perfect. Well, thank you again, Christina, so much for your time. This has been a really engaging, dynamic conversation with lots of concrete activities that people can use. And I'm sure if anyone wants to get in touch with you, I can share your contact information with
Yeah,
them.
of course. Yeah, of course, yeah.
And thank you all for joining us on this call. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions or you want a copy of this recording, and we will see you in January, actually. So have a wonderful holiday season. And for our members, I am here for whatever you need. So any sort of connections that have been sparked by this call, please let me know. I'm happy to connect you to anybody else or any activities or resources. So have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you,
Thank
Ray,
you.
for your help and
Thank you.
like telling me, teeing it up for me.
Of
I learned
course.
a lot.
Of course.
So much
Thanks
we
for
can do.
joining us.
Yeah.